Hi, I'm michoacan and you're in the stream. On today's programme, we get to spend time with some of Al Jazeera's best correspondents for a look behind the scenes of stories that they've been reporting on. We speak to John Holman in Mexico. He's been reporting for years on cartel violence. In a recent film, he explores what happens to civilians caught in the crossfire. In Germany, once-in-a-generation floods have caused death and destruction. Seth Vassen is standing by to tell us more about that story. I'll also be looking out for your comments and questions in our YouTube chat, so you can share your thoughts right here. We start with Catherine Soy, who's been reporting in Ethiopia. Catherine recently gained exclusive access to the Tigray Amhara region.
Amhara Special Forces and Ethiopian Federal Police at a checkpoint in Mekele. Passing through requires identification papers. We were on a rare regional government-guided trip, but even filming the forces and their militia called Fano was difficult. The town, claimed by both the Amhara and Tigrayan ethnic communities, was under Tigray's administration before the war started in November. It's where one of the worst atrocities happened. Hundreds of people were killed. The communities accuse each other's fighters of committing it.
Catherine Soy joins us now from Addis Ababa. Catherine, it's so good to see you. When you were reporting from the Tigray Amhara region on the border there, just getting access is tricky. That's challenging. Tell us more about that.
Yes, it's very frustrating, very tricky indeed, as you mentioned. We got the success from the Amhara regional government, and you may wonder why, because we're talking about Western Tigray. These areas we're talking about are mapped in Western Tigray. But in the 8 months of the war, Amhara forces have occupied these territories. They say that these areas belonged to them historically, and it's only until the 90s when the TPLF, that the Tigray People's Liberation Front, took power, that they annexed this land to Tigray. So the Amhara say it is their land, but then the Tigrayans, who are now, the Tigray forces who are now pushing south and west, say they want to reclaim back those lands. They say that the Amhara forces took advantage of this conflict to forcefully take over those territories. So it is a huge land dispute. And now, because it's under the administration of Amhara, we sought authorization from the Amhara leadership. But even with the authorization, we had to go with minders, with guns, and it was also very difficult, even with those minders, to film at checkpoints. Those pictures that you showed there are actually pictures that we filmed secretly because they wouldn't let us film any of their forces. They have a militia called Fano as well. They wouldn't let us film that, and it was also very difficult to get a sense of, you know, whether the people we were talking to, the villages, there were Tigrayans there as well. It was very difficult for us to tell whether, you know, they were giving us information independently and without fear, because we were surrounded by all these minders. When we were there, there's a town called Humera. It's one of the contested ones. And before the conflict, Humera and Mekele, which you showed there with the mass graves, Tigrayans and Amhara people lived side by side before this war. So a lot of Tigrayans have fled. There's some that have been left. So when we were there, the local administrators organized these protests by the Tigrayans in support of Amharas. It was very hard for us to, you know, really get a sense.
Was it theatre? Maybe it was even theatre, Catherine. It was just for the cameras. Let me ask you this, because you did a very important interview with the Amhara's deputy president, and trying to keep up with the politics and the history in Ethiopia is difficult, is challenging. But in less than a minute, you nailed it in this report. Let me show everybody. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen.
This is the border of Tigray.
The region's vice president shows us a 1985 map that places much of the disputed territories in Amhara region. The borderlines have, however, since been redrawn. He tells us when the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, took power, it annexed the land to Tigray.
We have never, ever accepted. The Amhara people and regional government has never endorsed it.
We have never been consulted. So whenever you say historical disputes, it takes you some years behind, and one time it was there, another time it was here. That's what you call a dispute. It has never been. So it couldn't be just a dispute. It was rather taken unilaterally by the TPLF. It was decided.
Catherine, I'm going to put some questions to you from our stream audience. This is a war of conflicting ideologies, says this tweet. Unitary by PM Abiy and semi-autonomous ethnic federalism by the TPLF. The PM sees ethnic federalism as a root of all Ethiopian evils, while TPLF sees otherwise. This is this viewer's idea, this is their opinion. But how can these sides reconcile is the question. Catherine.
Well, for me, I think at this point, it's very difficult to see an immediate reconciliation. All sides have taken such hardline positions. They're all accusing each other of ethnic cleansing and things like that. It seems very much like a supremacy battle. Tigray, leadership accusing the Amhara administration of, just trying to expand their territory, to expand beyond their territory. Then we have this land dispute. We're talking about very rich agricultural lands. And in this whole conflict, it's not just Amharas and Tigrayans. We are also seeing now other regions that were not previously involved in the Tigray conflict now getting involved. We're seeing, regions like Oromia, like Somali region, all saying they're sending their own forces, sending their own militia to come and join this war and fight alongside government troops and Amhara forces to fight the Tigrayan defense forces. So when you're seeing this kind of thing, it worries a lot of people because it's taking a very dangerous stand, a very dangerous ethnic stand, if I may say.
All right, Catherine, I'm going to ask you two questions very, very briefly and very quickly. One comes via a video comment and another one comes from YouTube. Let's start with the video comment.
Mobilizing more forces consisting of militias and regional forces to enter into the conflict represents new forms of escalation and intractability implicating the entire country. It further crystallizes the fact that no durable solution is likely to come from either of the warring parties who continue mobilizing towards war and violence.
So for Jazeera, is there a durable solution from Noah on YouTube watching right now? Do you think there will be a peaceful resolution between Amhara and Tigray? What insight did you gain from your reporting? Very quickly, Catherine.
Well, again, when I spoke to the deputy president of, Amhara region, again, his position was very hardline. He said that, yes, we need a durable solution. We need a peaceful resolution. It's the planting season now. People need to be in their farms. They can't be evicted and, kicked out of their homes and things like that. But then on the other hand, he says that, well, we cannot watch as our people are being killed, as our people are being evicted. He called upon, people in the villages, in those frontline areas saying, the farmers, the people in the villages, come out, defend yourselves. And I asked him, are you telling them to arm themselves, civilians, Ethiopians in these villages? And he said, yes, because what can they do? If you go to the other side, Tigray, the leadership there is saying the same things. The leadership, people are being armed, young people are being recruited and trained and armed. So at this point, it's very difficult to see a solution, a peaceful solution, even if they're all saying they want peace. This is not about Tigrayans. This is not about Amhara people. This is about the leadership. It's about the politics.
Thank you, Catherine. Sorry for sharing your reporting with us and taking us behind the scenes of the story as well. We move now to Western Europe, where flooding has left close to 200 dead and almost 1,000 people unaccounted for. Here's Step Vassen reporting earlier in the week from Erstadt in Germany.
It was rush hour when the water quickly inundated highway number 265 near Erstadt, catching unexpected drivers and passengers by surprise. Soldiers and rescue workers tried to reach trapped cars, finding out if everyone made it out in time.
We hope that they made it out of their cars, but we are not sure. And we can guarantee that there are perhaps people in the cars. We could not check all cars And if you see the quality of the water, also the check with divers is of no use.
Looking at how challenging it is to free this one highway, it becomes clear that recovery will take time.
So Hassan is joining us from Bonn. Hello there, Step. This story was literally close to home. We often say, oh, this is close to home, but it really was. Can you explain why?
It was very close to home because this is happening just an hour or 2 hours away from where I was born. This is like my home area. I went on holidays when I was a child to these locations here in the western part of Germany. And it was also happening in the south of the Netherlands where my parents are living. And that's actually why I jumped in the car so quickly when I heard about these floods, because I got messages from my parents that their village was underwater. And that really struck me because I thought, why is this happening now? And I knew, of course, about the torrential rains, but I also never expected these kinds of floods. And my first idea was climate change. Climate change is now getting a visible face here in Europe.
So I'm going to show a couple of pictures because if you look in the background, if you look behind Step and her Wellingtons, you see so much. There is chaos in the background. I'm just going to show a couple more pictures here. This is you getting ready to do a stand-up, a piece to camera. But look, what is this? Upside down. This vehicle is upside down. You can see the destruction. And again here, a vehicle being flipped. When you first got onto the scene, what was your reaction? Because you have covered floods in other parts of the world, particularly in Asia. So you're not a newcomer to what flood destruction can do.
No, the first thing I thought, it looks like the tsunami, the aftermath of the tsunami in Indonesia in 2004, which I covered extensively. And I never really expected to find these kinds of images, of course, so close to home in Europe. And people there also were completely taken by surprise. They knew only disasters from television, from Asia, from Africa. But now, you know, this kind of destruction they've never seen before. As you say, cars were all over the place. They were swimming from other villages. There were trees like everywhere. They were just taken out like they were weighing nothing. And the rivers overflowed, the bridges broken, lots of houses damaged. And one story that really struck me very deeply was this story where we first went, and it was a house for disabled people. And we heard 12 people died there. And we really wanted to find this place. And it was nearly impossible. We couldn't find it because there was mud everywhere. Roads were blocked. And then finally, when we were shooting the whole day, at the end of the day, we found this building. And we found the story there of the neighbors who saw what happened, that the water came up into the first floor and there was no evacuation because the authorities were completely overwhelmed. So they had been evacuating some part of the town, but that particular part wasn't evacuated. So people were still stuck there, and they were on the first floor, on the ground floor, and they couldn't escape. They were just simply stuck, and they drowned, sadly.
Steph, I'm going to show an image from your Instagram. Have a look here on my laptop. Steph's obviously seen this, but there's something here that I wanted to show you. Divers caught by surprise. The drivers on a highway caught by surprise. It's the surprise element that I want to build on. This is Jeff DaCosta, Step. Have a listen to his story, also close to home for him and his parents. And then just comment off the back of it, if you would. Here's Jeff.
As a flood scientist, I'm really used to looking at data regarding floods impacting rivers and societies. But just last week, I found myself on the other side of the data when my parents called me in distress, telling me that their home was being flooded. And just seeing how emotionally draining, physically and financially traumatizing it is to have their home inundated was just such a stark reminder of how devastating floods can be on people and communities. Of course, if we look at the bigger picture in Europe, they were relatively lucky. In Belgium and in Germany especially, hundreds of people have died and communities have been erased from the map due to a lack of adequate and timely warning. As a researcher, I believe that as a society we have failed people, and a good forecast is useless if decision makers do not take action upon receiving warnings.
Yes, exactly. It's not only the warning system that failed. I spoke about the evacuations earlier, but a lot of people are also wondering, what have we been doing against climate change, against global warming? Of course, in the western part of Germany, when I was driving around there, and I was driving between the countries, I went back and forth to the Netherlands as well. And you see the industrial areas you're passing, the coal power plants that are still operating there. So a lot of people have also been asking questions, what is the impact of all this industry here in this part of the world on this changing climate? And I think this is really where this discussion will go to. I think this will really have a long-term impact on the discussion on climate change in the Netherlands, in Germany, in Belgium, in the western part of Europe.
Step, I am just going to wrap up our segment together. I know that volunteers are making a difference on the ground. What is the latest that you're seeing that you've been reporting for us on Al Jazeera?
Well, it was overwhelming. Today, I spent the whole day in a place, Bad Münstereifel, which was one of the worst hit. And Angela Merkel was actually there. And people there were so busy working, just hundreds of volunteers. They were lining up. They made these human chains. They had buckets. They were passing it on one by one with their bare hands. And while Angela Merkel was in the back talking to officials, they kept working, and they were actually angry and irritated. They started talking to me like, why is she still there? We need to work. And she's actually blocking everything.
She's in the way.
Yeah, she's in the way. Let her go.
Move aside, Angela Merkel. We have work to do. Step.
I know, that was exactly what they said.
Step, thank you so much for sharing your reporting with us. We will continue to watch it on Al Jazeera. Finally, we head to the Mexican state of Michoacan. Here is a clip from the Al Jazeera film, Mexico's Kill Zone.
El Cartel Jalisco somos, entre comillas, los que somos malos, los que somos terroristas, los que extorsionamos, los que robamos. Y no es así. ¿Por qué? Porque nosotros no tenemos necesidad de robar. Nosotros somos narcotraficantes.
But the reality is that the four letters, as they're called here, are brutal, ruthless. They've killed police and disappeared civilians across the country. And now they're invading Michoacan. We're here to ask what that means for an already traumatized population and who is going to stop them. We're heading into a war zone.
So John Holman joins us now from Mexico City. John, I have to ask you, how did you get an interview with Jalisco New Generation Cartel leader? How is that even possible?
Yeah, I was just watching it there, and it's a little bit of an out-of-body experience, because you see it on the screen, it's one thing, and it was quite another when we were actually there. I think we were trying at the time to get to a town called Aguililla, and that town is more extreme than anything else I've seen in Mexico, and I've been here like 14 years now. It's basically under siege between two different criminal groups. We've got that group, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel on one side, and then it's being sort of blocked off on the other side by another group called Carteles Unidos. So to get there, we had to drive down this dirt road over the mountains, and that was a road that this cartel, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, controlled. And so we were going along, we passed this village where they had their base of operations. We'd already asked them for permission to go down that road, and they said yes. We sort of knew we were okay to do that as long as that message got passed down to the guys at the checkpoint. And then I was going with a really good producer, Miguel Angel Vega, and a really good camera person, Gustavo Huerta. Of course, I'm just one part of this team, though. And more than anything, they managed to persuade the guys at the checkpoint, we'd love to do an interview with you. We want to hear what you've got to say at least. And eventually he said, okay, but you need to go to this clandestine airstrip that we've got in the middle of the woods, like 10 minutes away. And I think at that point, I think the other two were sort of like, yes, okay. That was the point where I was like, oh no, this is how all of those bad
This is how good correspondents die. Oh, okay. All right, so in your film, there are moments where, as a viewer, I was afraid because you looked afraid. One of them was when you were in an abandoned village. I'm just going to play that clip for our stream audience. Let's have a look.
You can see on the wall there, it's got the initials of Cartel Jalisco New Generation. lift the bullet hole. Among the broken glass on the floor, there's also fully poison sores. It's pretty unnerving being here, actually, in a completely deserted village in this house. There's no one else around so fast.
Yeah, that was just as frightening actually at the time as it looks on the video. I saw the video went up on YouTube obviously, and I saw one person commenting saying, "Oh, typical journalist hype," and I just want to assure that person that I was just as worried as I appeared on the screen. We all ran back to the car obviously, and Gustavo Huerta, the camera person, was the only person that he didn't want to leave the house even after we heard gunshots around. And apparently people told us afterwards that that's what the cartel do. Basically, they just fire in the air to let you know that that's it. You're not going to go nosing around one of their, I think that was one of their abandoned safe houses, basically. So I suppose I thought as well after that, in the moment, obviously, we were just filming what we could. It's actually someone's house, and the whole village was like that. You know, just ovens left outside. There were some cats that had been left. People had just left everything and ran, and that whole little road was like that. Do you know what I mean? You just saw these places where people had just had to abandon their lives. So I suppose we're talking about my fear of the moment and our fear of the moment. God, you just imagine what it was like to live there, to live through that, and to have to go, you know?
It wasn't just the story of the cartels you were telling the story of the people who abandoned their villages, you had to move on, and you took us to the border. You connected the dots between the cartels, the fighting for territory, and then ordinary people who are trying to live in that situation. There's one family, they're here on my laptop. I'm just taking a still from your film. And I'm wondering what happened to this family. They fled because their young teen daughter, just here, the cartel kidnapped her for a couple of days, and they were afraid. What happened to this family, John?
Yeah, it's exactly as you said it, and we met them on the Mexican border, and they were really brave. They were the only people that would speak to us actually on camera about what had happened to them. And just this week, actually, Femi, we heard back from Leticia, who's the mother, sort of the matriarch of the family, the one that holds it all together. And they actually managed to get over to the United States, asking for asylum, and they're currently in the US. So that was such a relief to hear that, because we've been with so many families that had to flee. Most of them it was because, and this also I have to say, producer Amparo Rodriguez and our producer Vicente Calderon really stood out for us in this. They just gathered so many testimonies, if they wanted to speak on camera or not, people that showed them photos of their dead sons, their dead relatives in the morgue, people that just said, we just had to leave everything, just the same as that family. You know, they went in the dead of night in the car, they left everything behind. They were living, I think there were 6 of them in 2 tents, including that little girl, in 2 tents on the border there. And I asked them, but how are you feeling right now? And they would say, well, we're happy, we're all alive, and we're together. I just can't, I think it's difficult to imagine that kind of danger and that kind of fear. And they said they could never go back. So I suppose a happy story for them, but I reckon there were a lot of people on the border, a real wave of migration from Michoacan. And I think that a lot of people there wouldn't have had the same success, I suppose.
John, we're going to leave it there, but I am going to point everybody who's watching the stream today to have a look here on my laptop, because I want you to watch this film, the full report, Living in Mexico's Kill Zone. In 25 minutes, John and his team take us inside to Mexico, inside Michoacan, and really some of the difficulties that people are having there. Thank you, John. Thank you, Step. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for watching. If there are any stories that you'd like us to do on the stream, you can tweet us at ajstream. I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.